All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. Hello, Drew. Today we're going to talk about some injuries that matter in the NFL, particularly on the Texans and the Chargers with their quarterbacks and other assorted players going down. We'll talk stock up, stock down with a couple of NFC teams in the Bucs and the Lions, and then we'll close out with the MVP market, which you'll be shocked to hear I've got some opinions on.
Ooh.
But let's start with the Texans, where CJ Stroud, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. We're getting to the point of the season where guys seem to be getting pushed through concussion protocol. These, important key players seem to be getting pushed through. Guys like Chris Olave and Derek Carr, AJ Terrell for the Falcons. Like these guys, they're coming back after 1 week. Seeing the tape again of the incident where he hit his head, and then also just hearing D'Amico Ryans talk about it today. I mean, it was such a violent injury in the way that he was just writhing on the ground and the way Ryans is speaking. I'm kind of thinking that he may not play. And then Nico Collins strained his calf, which is a re-aggravation of a previous injury. And it looks like he might miss some time as well. Obviously, Tank Dell already out for the season. Blake Cashman left the game, their best linebacker. They're banged up on the offensive line. Seems like it's all kind of cresting in the wrong way for the Texans at the moment, Drew.
Bad luck, really. I really wanted to see this group make a playoff push. They had the schedule that was right there to make it happen, and this injury does feel serious. I think your read on it is completely fair. There may even be renewed scrutiny with the way some of these teams are handling concussion protocol in light of the TJ Watt fiasco. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans do take this a little bit more carefully. The drop off from Stroud to Davis Mills might be one of the bigger ones in all of football. I can't believe we are here with a rookie quarterback, but Davis Mills is not a guy that I really would expect even has like sort of a long career as a backup in this league. Maybe he's put up, done enough, on tape to warrant some consideration there. But I think you're talking about at least a 6-point delta here between Stroud into down to Mills. So the fact that this potentially, again, pending the result of the Tennessee game and them coming out of that healthy against the Dolphins, I wouldn't be surprised if this moves to 3 on the news that Stroud does not play. Now, it should be noted for the loyal listeners, best of luck guessing quarterback availability, I guess. I had no read that Geno Smith was going to miss last week. That was a total shock. And I had no read that Trevor Lawrence was actually going to play until he actually stepped on the field and took the first snap. So, we're at the time of the year where some of these guys clearly are calling their own numbers. But that said, it's not going to induce a bet for me on the Titans for lots of reasons. But I definitely think you have to figure out ways to play defense on any kind of season-long Texans bullish anything. Because this is definitely a losable game if Mills takes the snaps.
Yeah, and the issue is for the Texans after that Tennessee game. So they played the Titans twice the rest of the way, which is very handy. But after at Tennessee, which if Stroud doesn't go, then the Texans will be dogs in that game. Then it's home to Cleveland, and Cleveland all of a sudden seems like they're back, and Myles Garrett is back to 100% health. We were talking about this before we started, but Myles Garrett had a 92 PFF grade on Sunday, so he's all the way back. By that stage, Christmas Eve, Denzel Ward presumably will be back, and all of a sudden, with all the injuries that Houston have, they may be dogs at home to Joe Flacco. Like that's in play. And so I think the issue with Davis Mills, it's not so much Davis Mills in a nutshell. It's that Davis Mills is coming into an already cluster injury situation on the offense where you're missing Dell, you're likely missing Collins, you're missing guys on the offensive line. And then the defense, which seemed like it was trending in the right direction, got lit up by Zach Wilson, and lit up by relative standards, given that they allowed, to your previous point that you made to me, Zach Wilson's first positive EPA game of the season. But I mean, it's not a great defense, and I think that they had some soft opposition. They looked like they were going in the right way, but I think that Derek Stingley's interceptions and the hype around him kind of papered over that, outside of Cashman, they're weak at linebacker, interior, the defensive line isn't great. Jalen Petrie is one of the most overrated players in the NFL. Like he's not helped at the moment. Like he makes big splash plays, but down to down, I don't think he helps you a ton. So all of a sudden, you're looking at a team that looked like it could be a sleeper in the AFC, and now is worse than your average team on neutral is presently constructed. So not feeling great about the Texans. Whenever stuff like this happens, my immediate reaction is, okay, who else is on the schedule? Who can take advantage of this team that seems like, and look, free fall may be a bit of an exaggeration because I think Stroud is a top 10 quarterback and he may be just back in 2 weeks and they might be fine. But they're certainly worse off than they looked like they'd be 2 weeks ago. And so who on the schedule can take advantage? Well, they play the Titans twice. So that doesn't help anything because the Titans are useless for our purposes, basically.
Yeah.
They play the Browns. That's relevant for Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year. He's more likely to win that game now, which would effectively lock up a playoff spot. They play the Colts in the final week. We thought a week ago that line might be Houston minus 2.5 in Indy. They may not even be favored by the time that we get to that game. So that helps Shane Steichen, Coach of the Year. His stock goes up as Houston, the team they're competing with, in the AFC. I would say at this point, mainly for a wild card spot. I know they're both in the mix for the division, but the Jags are still pretty sizable favorites there with the tiebreak situation. But those, I think, are the two long-term plays that really benefit are Garrett and Steichen, and to some extent Kevin Stefanski as well.
I think all that's fair. A great breakdown. Just kind of curious. The market thinks this is coin flip Parsons Garrett. I'm imagining you think it's probably more like 60-40 more?
I'm more like 45 Garrett, 40 Parsons, 15 weird stuff happens.
Okay.
Because I don't think these guys are far enough in front of out of the field that it's just a definitive 2-horse race. Now I'm saying I think they're 85% of the market, so pretty close to it. But everyone's riding off TJ Watt. TJ Watt has more sacks than both of them, and if he comes out and he's just fine after the extended break off the concussion protocol, and he sacks Gardner Minshew 2.5 times, and the Colts are back in, the Steelers are back in playoff position, then all of a sudden, TJ Watt's right back in it. So this market moves pretty fluidly week to week, but I don't see any reason why Parsons should be favorite over Garrett, given that Garrett's counting stats are better. No, he's got half a sack more, but the forced fumbles, deflection, all this kind of stuff, Garrett leads. I think the Browns have a better defense than the Cowboys. Statistically, Garrett has a much easier schedule down the stretch in terms of opposing teams and opposing quarterbacks in terms of their sack rate. Garrett plays Fields, CJ Stroud, and Zach Wilson his next 3 weeks, and then he gets the Bengals offensive line in week 18. Now, Parsons has Sam Howell in week 18, and Parsons might try and sack him 5 times to win DPOY in that game. And that would be stressful for me as someone who's on Garrett. But before then, it's Josh Allen, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jared Goff. And these guys don't get sacked. So that is as tough as it gets. But yeah, Garrett should be favorite for me. A team that doesn't feature into any awards discussions, the Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert, broken finger on his throwing hand. I would guess that he is done for the season, given that they have effectively nothing to play for now that they lost that game. What is the delta from Justin Herbert to a great Easton Stick?
It's big. It's very big. I don't think Easton Stick is necessarily an NFL player, at least based on what we saw in these, tiny sample we have of him, playing NFL football, or trying to, I guess. And yeah, the delta would be probably on the order of the biggest of all starter to backup situations, 7, maybe more, if the Chargers had a fully healthy offense otherwise. They are operating right now with a very, very, very weak squad in terms of skill position players. And so, do you take the offense from expecting something like 20th percentile output and now you drop it all the way to 5th percentile output? Maybe. Like, that's not crazy to me. I mean, this offense is going to struggle to score points with the pass, with the pass catchers that they have going, and the way the offensive line is blocking right now. And for what it's worth, the Raiders defense is coming. Like, I don't really see it when I watch their games, and maybe I'm just not watching close enough because they're a tough hang. But the Raiders defense is grading pretty well, and they might be top half. They may be top 10. And I kind of been caught by surprise at how well they're grading and how well they're playing. And good for them that they get to go up against another backup quarterback. They made Josh Dobbs look extremely pedestrian last week, and they could probably do the same or better against Easton Stick. So not exactly expecting a high scoring affair, as the market is currently sitting at 33.5. I think everybody pretty much agrees here. This is going to be a tough one. And I think realistically, you're only now trying to evaluate players at the end of the roster if you're the Chargers brass and you're looking forward to next season, because they are effectively eliminated.
Yes. It's funny talking about the delta between quarterbacks, and often these situations, they give rise to uncertainty and variances because we don't know what the backup is. Unfortunately, we kind of know what Easton Stick is. This isn't a Jake Browning situation where, it's funny, that Jags-Bengals game closed Jags 10.5. If they played next week in Jacksonville, is that line 4.5? Like, it's a 6.5? Like,
yeah,
that line moves. It's cut in half, I think, based on just that's how quickly a rating of a quarterback who we know nothing about can change.
Yep.
And look, Browning had a clunker against the Steelers, and that was completely unexpected that he was going to have, basically a 100th percentile game. But that is how this works sometimes. I think that the Raiders -3 is relatively good at the moment, just because there is the upside that Jimmy G is the quarterback. And if Jimmy is the quarterback, then this line isn't closing 3. It's closing, I think, materially higher, just with how bad this Chargers defense is and how bad Easton Stick is. I also think that we will see that, look, I think Justin Herbert is a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think the offense was underwhelming because of him. I think it was everything else. And I think we're about to see exactly how bad it can get. And we kind of already did see it against the Broncos. So this is a terrible offense without Herbert. It's a terrible defense. And they're going up against a Raiders team that, to your point, defensively has been stunningly, I guess, competent, or at least competitive. They even gave Miami some difficulty a couple of games ago. So in terms of EPA per play, they're 15th on the season. That's a great result for the Raiders. I mean, you would have set the over-under coming in at like 23.5,
24, something like that.
20s, something like that. So
yeah,
good for the Raiders, and I think they will beat the Chargers. All right, before we get to the Bucs this holiday season, get the fantasy fan in your life, Drew, the exclusive RotoWorld Draft Guide bundle featuring expert analytics, player insights, and season-long tools. Get all 3 of the draft guides for one low price. Go to NBCsports.com/holiday bundle and use code holiday23 at checkout to receive 25% off and a $10 Fanatics gift card. All right. Stock up, stock down after week 14. Stock up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who now lead the NFC South. They control their own destiny, and what a destiny it is. They have a somewhat difficult schedule at Green Bay, home to Jacksonville. By that point, Jacksonville should be a little bit healthier, although some of those guys aren't coming back. And then New Orleans, and then at Carolina. Do you think this is the best team in the NFC South, and is plus 165 to win the division, that great division? Is that appetizing to you?
Well, this is so hard, man. Falcons and the Saints don't seem to want to win this, despite the schedule gods giving them every conceivable avenue. The answer to your question, are they the best of these 3 teams? Yes. As the most lukewarm, yes, I probably could possibly come up with. Baker Mayfield is fine. Mike Evans is a god. Chris Godwin is being underutilized in this offense. Rashad White is coming along and really kind of giving them a more balanced attack than we saw in the late stages of the Brady era. So yeah, this is an offense that can score points on you. Their incredible pass protection of that offensive line. We live in an NFL right now where it is very, very tough to find good pass pro. Bucs got it. Bucs defense is dealing with a whole slew of injuries. I'm guessing that those guys are not done for the season. They didn't IR them. They're probably going to come back. So yeah, the Bucs can win this division. And I say this as someone who bet the Saints aggressively in the middle of the season when they were, kind of in this same price point, just because I didn't see how they weren't going to continue to progress to the good. The defense for the Saints has completely fallen apart, and the Falcons are one of the more untrustworthy groups just on both sides of the ball. Their injuries have been creeping up. So you have banged up defenses with all three of these squads. And if you're going to basically say then the defenses are a wash, this just comes down squarely to quarterback play, offensive potential, and schedule. The benefits to the schedule goes to the Falcons and the Saints because there's quite a bit easier. But the benefit from quarterback play, in my opinion, is pretty clearly in favor of the Bucs. Would you say Baker Mayfield is the best of these three quarterbacks by a small margin or by a meaningful margin?
I mean, it just depends. Like, I don't know what is left of Derek Carr's brain and body at this point. And if you told me that Carr was going to be fully healthy, I still think he's right there with Baker. But if Carr is going to be whatever this diminished version of him is, and we'll see what happens with Shaheed and Thomas and Taysom Hill and the guys outside of Olave that you can actually throw to. Like A.T. Perry is the second guy in the receiving core at the moment. But I think Baker is the best guy. The only thing is that Baker hurt himself against the Colts 3 weeks ago. He's not looked good since then, and he struggled against Atlanta, despite Atlanta missing half of their defense. Basically, he struggled against the Panthers. I mean, he's had 199 yards, 202 passing yards, 144 passing yards. Like, without getting into the efficiency and everything, like, that's not great because the Colts, the Panthers, and the Falcons do not have ultra imposing defenses. I mean, the Bucs, they should have lost this game to the Falcons. They were outplayed when you look at the fundamentals, look at success rate. They lost the game, the Falcons did, basically because Desmond Ridder threw a pick backed up in his own end zone, and they lost 18% win probability on a play in the first quarter. Like, you don't see that every game, but that's what happened, and that's why they lost. Baker Mayfield was negative 18% completion percentage over expected against Atlanta. So that's not ideal. I don't think he is right. Maybe he will get better. But, I mean, he's playing competently enough. There are enough pieces on this team. Like, when Vita Vea comes back, I'm presuming this coming week, given that he was only ruled out on Sunday, that just by himself, he makes them a very decent run defense. The secondary has no prayer. Outside of Antoine Winfield Jr., there's just nothing in that secondary. Their cornerbacks, there's nothing there. It feels like they haven't had a pass rush since they won the Super Bowl either. Like, last year, they didn't have a pass rush. This year, even with Shaq Barrett back, they don't really have a pass rush, and they have great tackles. But the offense, I mean, they're just a 6 out of 10 across the board. But a 6 out of 10 across the board may well be enough to win this division. And I make them plus 140 fair to win the division, so there's a little bit of meat on the bone. I haven't even bet that because I don't know. I just don't want to bet.
I'm done with these.
Plus 140 of my numbers. So it is more a bet against the rest of the NFC South than it is a bet on the Bucs. But it's probably going to come down to that home game against New Orleans in 3 weeks. And I think that may well decide the division because the Falcons are going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. How many wins the South, you think?
9.
9
will lock it in, and then 8 maybe if you get lucky with tie breaks. The Bucs, for instance, if the Bucs beat New Orleans and then lose a couple of games, if the Bucs beat New Orleans and Carolina, maybe that gives them the tie breaks so they can lose to Green Bay and Jacksonville. But
the Buccaneers have the potential to back-to-back ship the NFC South with 8-9 records.
Yeah, I mean, they may well do it. Different circumstances as well. I mean, going from Tom Brady and aspirations of winning the Super Bowl to going to very much not Tom Brady.
Yeah, the reset year. This was supposed to be the year that they just took their medicine and fixed the cap situation and start competing again in the future. Yeah,
I thought they might be the worst team in football, and that's clearly not correct. Last thing on this is. So a little bit of chatter about Baker Mayfield, comeback player of the year. after this heroic season where he's led the Bucs to 6-7 in the worst division in football. It's 14th in EPA per play. A triumphant story going from trending out of the league to 6-7 on a bad team and a middle of the pack quarterback. But honestly, I don't see it with Mayfield beating. I don't think he has the ceiling to beat Damar Hamlin. I don't think anyone does at this point. But any thoughts on Baker?
Yeah, excellent case to be and also receiving votes.
Yes. Yeah, that feels right. In the same vein that Russell Wilson is, I think the only two cases that had the ceiling to actually beat Damar were Aaron Rodgers, if he returned and led the Jets to the playoffs, and Josh Dobbs, if Dobbs had led the Vikings to the division without playing horrendously like he did against the Raiders and the Bears. So I think that award is very much done.
You know what's kind of funny?
What's funny?
Who's having the best season off of a very meaningful injury?
Matthew Stafford.
Brock Purdy.
Well, yeah.
This guy went under the knife in March, Jay. He went under the knife in March, and he's playing at an MVP level. Unbelievable.
Yeah. No, it is. It's just because he didn't miss any games, so no one even realizes. Hope that needs to play more into his MVP case. They just start beating.
I was gonna save it for later, but you brought up comeback player of the year, and weaving the narrative of the fact that he is playing this well, coming off of the surgery he had in March, is pretty unbelievable.
Yep. No, I like that too. And just because I mentioned Stafford, I don't think Stafford's winning this award either. But he's been great. But again, he's returning from 2 years ago. He won the Super Bowl, and then he had no offensive line last year. Now this year, he's back to being, efficiency-wise, he's the 12th best quarterback in football. So again, it's not really a case. Like, it's an others receiving votes type of operation. All right, another other receiving votes operation in the NFC is the Detroit Lions, who have now fallen to 9-4. They are 4.5-point favorites home to the Denver Broncos. The total is 46.5. Saturday night game. They did not look very good against the Bears. Jared Goff looked horrific, as is often the case when he goes outdoors in the cold against a competent defense. Do you think that the Lions are going to hold on and win this division?
Man, I think the door is wide open for the Packers. We don't know the result of the Monday Night Football game at the time of this recording. I think it's pretty safe to assume that they win. Who knows if they'll cover? They're currently 6-point favorites. The Packers have the scope to get healthier. Christian Watson presumably will come back down the stretch. Jair Alexander presumably will come back down the stretch. Their young core continues to get better week in, week out. I don't think that Jordan Love is going to wake up one day and turn into a pumpkin. The pass protection for the Packers is outstanding. Matt LaFleur is kind of finally understanding how to use the pieces, and he's really coached these guys up to capable offensive players, which is way cool to see in real time. And the Packers have they need a little bit more help. They need the Vikings specifically to beat the Lions at least 1-2. The Packers have to win out to get to 11-6, and they need the Lions to take one more loss in division to make this happen. I think that's a realistic possibility. We talked about it last week. The price was in the 20-1 range. It didn't seem right, considering the fact that there was a very real possibility the Lions were going to do this. And now I think the real takeaways from the Lions game against the Bears are their offense doesn't travel, particularly in the month of December. We had suspected that because of Goff's history of outdoor cold weather type of games. But the defense, which we have known for weeks now was a flashing red siren of concern, is now just flat out bad. The one bright spot on this defense, or I guess maybe you could say the two bright spots on this defense, when earlier in the season we were kind of impressed with their quality of play, were on the defensive line. And it was Alan McNeil, who took a huge step forward this year, and it was Aiden Hutchinson, who was getting tons of pressure. Well, Alan McNeil's on IR now, and Aiden Hutchinson had one of maybe the worst plays of professional football yesterday. Did you see that clip circulated? Whew, my goodness gracious. I mean, he absolutely, freestyling, whiffed, let the edge, didn't contain the edge on the Justin Fields touchdown that effectively put the game away for the Bears. And, if you're that desperate for, kind of coming up with, the home run play to get your team back in it. And, inevitably you let up, kind of the backbreaker, like that's a problem. So secondary is a disaster. Linebacking core is playing down. And I think the Bears kind of exposed all of the ways that you want to try to beat the Lions. So the blueprint is there. The Broncos have been, who's been very good at picking up a blueprint for how to beat a team and executing it very well? The Broncos this year. Like, they are tough to handicap because they look different and a little bit strange every week, and they don't look natural. There's no fluidity, but they, Sean Payton is doing a very nice job of team opponent specific game planning, and I would expect that the Lions are going to have their hands full this week. Now, I don't think the Broncos are any good, but I do think the Lions have this current price point that you're seeing right now, which actually, by the way, is trending up, as somebody has made their opinion known that Detroit should not be 3.5-point favorites. It should be more like 5. Okay. You're going to be indoors. Your offense is going to look better. Definitely the Broncos defense is a hair overrated, but if the Lions are covering this number, you're expecting that defense is going to be able to contain Cortland Sutton and Russell Wilson. And I don't know if that's exactly the case. So definitely prepared for the Lions to head into the playoff picture as a wild card. And that obviously has massive implications in the Coach of the Year market beyond just the NFC North market, which is, I think, starting to be more correctly priced with the difference between Lions and Packers.
Yep, agree. And I think with the Lions, it's pretty clear what ails them is this team was always built around its offensive line. Everything comes from this offensive line. The defense has never been particularly good. And Goff, his entire career, has been dreadful under pressure and awesome when he's kept clean. And they're missing 40% of what their intended offensive line was before the season. Vaitai is done. His career might be done. Frank Ragnow is out, and Dan Campbell says that he's, I think, hopeful that he'll come back Saturday, but off the short week, no guarantee that he gets back for the Denver game. And then on defense, they had 2 really good players on defense, Aiden Hutchinson and Alan McNeil, and now one of them's on IR, to your point. So now they have 1 really good player on defense, and I think Brian Branch is the only other above-average player on the entire defense. The defense just has no chance. So there are just no good players. Like they're just drawing dead. The Cowboys in week 17 are going to score 40 on them. Like Justin Herbert with that hopeless Chargers team and Keenan Allen coming in and out of the game scored 38. So I just don't think there's any hope for that defense. And then on offense, it's just going to be about getting the offensive line healthy, getting Goff, even beyond the offensive line. Goff the past few weeks has just looked terrible. Looks like he's in his own head again. Looks like his first year in Detroit. The Green Bay game was an absolute debacle, and I'm not sure if that's just gotten in his head because he was atrocious against Chicago again. So not trending in the right direction for the Lions. And also for the Vikings and the Packers, it was so crucial that the Lions lost that game to the Bears, because now division record gets squared up. Conference record, which will end up, I think, being the tiebreak between the Packers and the Lions. Now, however you slice a tiebreak situation between the Packers and the Lions win because the Lions lost that game to the Bears. And I think had they lost to the Broncos instead of the Bears, and that was their loss in this 2-game stretch, that wouldn't be the case. So a huge result for the Packers in terms of the division and Matt LaFleur.
I've done the simulations enough. I don't think that the game between the Broncos and the Lions really matters that much for the NFC North. Like, so if the Lions come out and win, like, congratulations. It doesn't really swing win probability a ton. It's much more about what the Packers do and then how the Lions handle those 2 Vikings games now. Do you agree with this move that the market is kind of buying Lions and or selling Broncos in one swoop? Like, I don't know that I'm seeing it this week, guys.
I don't think so. Not if it gets. I don't think it should be 4.5. I mean, short week by a day, but still short week typically favors the home team. But I don't think the gap between these 2 teams is that significant. The way they're playing at the moment, I would have thought the Lions are 2 points better than the Broncos on neutral. generously. And so with home field, you're looking at 3.5, I would think. So, yeah, I don't think it should be 4.5. And if it keeps trending the other way, I would not understand that. But, yeah, to your point, Lions are going to lose 2 of their last 4, which go Broncos, 2 against the Vikings, either side of the game at the Cowboys. They need to go 2-2 or worse in those 4, and then the Packers need to win out. Obviously, if they lose to the Broncos, that gives the Packers an extra loss to play with, but I wouldn't be banking on the Lions going 1-3 in this stretch. Though, who knows? They're not playing very well. Anyway, let's get to MVP. But first, this Sunday is an AFC battle with playoff implications, Drew, and Lamar Jackson and the Ravens travel to Jacksonville for a date with Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, MVP. Dak Prescott is your new favorite. He's plus 150. Brock Purdy is plus 200. Jalen Hurts is plus 700. I think I would need 4 times that price backing Hurts now. Lamar Jackson's plus 700. Tua is plus 800. Again, same comment about Hurts applies there. Tyreek Hill, who I think is Miami's candidate, he's 13-1. And I think thus ends the realistic contenders. I can't get there with Mahomes or Allen anymore. I think they're too far back. I don't think Christian McCaffrey has any chance to win the award. And there's no one else. So what do you think of the market?
Yeah, you said 4 times that price on Hurts. I would need 10 times. I would actually, I don't know for sure that I would bet 70-1 on Hurts. If you were having it.
But yeah, it's not, you wouldn't feel amazing about it, given he needs so much to go right for him now.
Yeah, I mean, the effective co-favorites right now just beat him head to head convincingly.
Like 20 plus points.
Yeah, and you know the reason he was favored 2 weeks ago, was it just 2 weeks ago? He was like plus 120.
It's favored a week ago after the
yeah, morning. But his number was mega short after he beat the Bills.
Yeah, he's plus 150. Plus
yeah, it was super short. Yeah, that feels like a million years ago. At this
I was
point.
very upset.
But yeah, I mean, at that time, the reason he was favored was because had he beaten the Niners and had he beaten the Cowboys, then he was going to finish with one loss, and the Eagles were going to be first 16-1 team we've ever seen, and it was going to be a cool story, and he was very live. But they lost those 2 games, and now the best they can finish is 14-3. And all of a sudden, these games down the stretch don't look as easy as they did because the rest of the Eagles are all playing poorly, not just Jalen Hurts, and he looks injured. He might miss some. They might be incentivized to specifically kind of give him some time off. I know that's been talked about. I think they need to regroup and kind of have a consolidation and health luck in order to really be factors at this point, which is crazy to say about a team that was so clearly on just everything was going right a couple weeks ago, but that's where they are. I think the MVP race is a 3-man race. I think it's Purdy, Dak, and Lamar.
Okay.
And I think that the Dak case is being so heavily pushed right now, and the Cowboys PR certainly behind some of that. Like they'd like to get him some visibility in terms of kind of just politicking for him to win this award. And I think that the fact that they're in these most watched games every week definitely matters. People are kind of impressed by the Cowboys, who are largely gotten it done against pretty bad teams. And I think that's all fine, but I think the Cowboys' potential losing to Buffalo this week, as they are currently dogs, and potentially losing to the Dolphins the following week, those are both real coin flip games. And 2 losses, Dak is not winning. 1 loss, and Dak is kind of on life support because Purdy could potentially win out. I think the way this goes, if I just had to be real crystal ball-y, I think the Buffalo Bills win this week. I think Dak's case takes a major hit. And I think the Christmas game between the Ravens and the 49ers likely decides this.
Yep. No, I agree with that. And I think Jalen Hurts, his case was always this bubble that was floating around, and it didn't have solid foundations because it was all built on him just having a team record that was 2 wins in front of everyone. And the moment that came back to the pack, he had nothing to fall back on because his stats are of the 7th best quarterback in the NFL this year or worse. And now that bubble has been burst. I think Dak has stronger foundations than Hurts, but also is a different type of bubble where right now he is riding this wave of momentum of destroying bad defenses for 2 months. And as soon as he takes a loss, he's going to fall into the 5 seed. And that's a problem because now if he takes a loss, his main competition is has the 1 seed currently and has control of the 1 seed and the destiny there. So I think that Dak, as soon as he takes a loss, I think it's just all going to somewhat collapse. And look, if Purdy, I can see worlds where Dak closes 3-1, Purdy loses to Lamar, and Purdy's 13-4, Dak is 13-4, Lamar takes a loss to the Dolphins or whatever, and Dak wins in that situation. I don't think one loss absolutely sinks him, but I think he becomes a significant dog even with just one loss. And I rate the Cowboys as effectively the second best team in football, like right there with the Bills, the Chiefs, the Dolphins in a bit of a cluster. And I make the Cowboys plus 720 to run the slate. Like that's how difficult their schedule is. At Buffalo, at Miami, home Detroit, layup game at the Commanders. But with the Niners, who I rate as the best team in football, like everyone, I have them plus 165 to run the slate. And the thing is that if they win the first 3 games of their remaining slate, which 2 of them are total gimmies, at the Cardinals and at the Commanders, either side of that game, home to Baltimore, which is going to be massive. If they win those 3 games, it is odds on that the last game of the season, which is kind of a banana skin home to the Rams, so that'd still be 10-point favorites or whatever. That banana skin, there'll be no stakes for them because it's odds on that the Cowboys will have lost one of their next 3 games, and it's odds on. Hugely odds on that the Cowboys will lose one of their next 3. And it is odds on that the Eagles will lose one of their next 3 as well. So I think that if Purdy just wins his next 3 games, I think that likely wraps it up. I think that beating Baltimore on Monday Night Football would be a coronation of sorts. And I think we're just at the point now in the discourse where, Trent Williams did a beautiful thing for Brock Purdy's MVP case yesterday with that great speech that he gave. Yeah. And it was reported on The Athletic. But I think now we're at the point where Purdy has made so many next-level big-time throws, and he ranks 5th by PFF's big-time throw metric. He's just made so many of these throws now that the idea that, he's a system quarterback, he's a yak guy, like all of this discourse has just been put out and tested, and it's all been dispelled. And every single week, people get more okay with the idea that Brock Purdy is an MVP. And I think that we've just gotten to the point now where if he gets the 1 seed, I think he's just going to win. And the Niners are pretty short to get the 1 seed. So I think that he should be the favorite pretty clearly over Dak. I agree with Lamar. And Lamar is the wild card because Lamar, whose stats do not compare to either of these guys. They don't even compare to Jalen Hurts'. But Lamar, if Lamar beats, we talked about this last week, if he beats the Niners on Monday Night Football in San Francisco, and then comes home and beats the Dolphins to wrap up the 1 seed, there's going to be such a swell of momentum behind Lamar Jackson. And I think he could very well ride that to winning MVP. Yeah. But it's pretty unlikely.
I actually disagree. I think it's very likely. I honestly think
I think it's unlikely he sweeps them both.
Oh, the sweeps. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. It's unlikely he sweeps, but I'll be honest with you, man. I like Ravens this week against the Jags. That's going to be a high-profile game. He gets to take on that lousy Jags defense. The Jags defense up against. Okay, so this is the other funny thing about Lamar. It's not how you start; it's how you finish with these award races.
Yep.
He had the best day of any professional football player yesterday. Period. His EPA per play was better than Brock Purdy. He doubled Brock Purdy yesterday, who was number 3. He was outstanding yesterday. Yeah, he had 16 plus total EPA generated was 16 yesterday. Purdy was like 8. Yeah. And honestly, the fact that matched what you saw when you watched that game, particularly at the end stages where it was literally like the Rams can't get him. They can't tackle him. and he's going to make the right read. He's making the right decisions. He's seeing the broken down coverages. He was like, he was executing so flawlessly in the end stages of that game. It has to make you think that the fact that the Ravens need to kind of continue to win in order to get a 1 seed and win the division, because the Browns are putting pressure on them. Like, he may finish ascending, which is a problem for Purdy and for Dak, because he's got the anchoring. People believe people are much happier believing, oh yeah, the best player in football is Lamar. How did we forget that? All right. Like, it's weird how a ton of the Dak discourse is like putting down Brock Purdy. And I find that pretty tasteless and stupid. It's annoying that the Dak discourse is like, well, or like the anti-Purdy discourse is, well, he's got all these great weapons around him. CeeDee Lamb would be wide receiver 1 on the Niners, people. Like, he's wide receiver 2 in the NFL right now. Like, I honestly don't understand the weapons argument of it. And the offensive, the offensive play calling factor of it is like, so we're just going to hold the fact that the coach is better than everyone against the player. What? We've never done that. Like, that's nonsense. So I honestly, I think Lamar is very, very live to come down the home stretch and win. The fact that the Ravens defense may be having some slippage and that the Ravens offense are going to have to, kind of get it done if they want these wins, I think is definitely of note. I realistically though, like, Dak taking a couple losses here against the Bills and the Dolphins feels likely, honestly. I don't think they match up especially well defensively against either of those teams, if we're being honest. And I think that definitely creates a situation where Dak is out of the mix, and then Christmas night, winner of Niners-Ravens is your MVP.
Yep. No, I agree that game likely decides it. The other thing with Dak is that he didn't play that well against the Eagles. I know the numbers were fine, but he kind of looked like, the Dak Prescott he'd always been until this year. And I feel in my gut that he's just going to blow one of these next 3 games, and probably 2 of the 3. And I think it's only going to take 1 loss. And I'm with you on Lamar. He is somewhat scary. At the same time, the Niners are going to be 5.5-point favorites in that game at home to the Ravens. At that point, the Niners should get some of their guys back, like Armstead and Ward, I would think, for that game. The Ravens defense, to your point, like, they're not the all-world unit that they were. And Lamar lit up the Rams. Like, he really struggled against the Chargers the week before. So I think Mark Andrews being out is a pretty big deal. And look, I make the Ravens 10-1 to run the slate. Now, I don't think he necessarily absolutely has to do that to an MVP. If he lost to the Jags or the Steelers, then he'd just win the other 3 games and wrap up the 1 seed and have the marquee wins over San Francisco and Miami. So I think he is the wild card. In a way, look, I think Dak is definitely the second favorite to win this award. But as someone who would like to see Brock Purdy win, in a way, I feel Lamar more, just because
yes.
What's the saying? When you're the best swordsman in the world, you don't fear the second best. You fear the most unconventional.
Yes.
I feel like Lamar Jackson is the unconventional one who's just throwing knuckleballs like R.A. Dickey, whereas I'd rather just have, Dak Prescott's just kind of Aaron Nola, a really solid performer, much easier to beat. But yeah, I do think that it's going to, I agree with you. I think it's going to come down to that week 17 game. Just right on your tail, your point there. Dak can't beat the Niners. No. Lamar can. Yes. Yep. No, 100%. And we see how much it's stupid, but it weighs so heavily in the discourse that Purdy destroyed Dallas and Philadelphia when, to be honest, he played way better against like the Jags and the Bucs and arguably even on Sunday than he did, at least against the Eagles. Against Dallas, he was awesome. This last one, Tyreek. I think there are worlds where Tyreek can win. I think if he beats Lamar, because he can knock out Lamar, he can knock out Dak as well, because he plays Dak too. He can take care of both of those guys. And if he goes, breaks the receiving record, 2K yards, 1 seed, Purdy stumbles, say Purdy loses to Lamar, and then Tyreek beats Lamar the following week, I think there are worlds where he can win. But I think that Purdy and Dak have created a statistical flaw that is just too high, where a quarterback is very, very likely to win the award. But we're not dismiss Tyreek entirely. And I think 13-1 is about fair.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Tyreek's candidacy we'll save this for later in the week. So tune in for more details. But Tyreek's candidacy ends next week against the Jets, in my opinion.
Yep. No, it's very possible. That defense is insane. You just cannot get anything.
They're so freaking good.
All right. We are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Please rate and subscribe if you're listening to us as a podcast. And a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you soon.